Hey, happy Monday afternoon. Dr. Alan Christensen here with you for another installment of Office Hours Live. So good to be with you today. I'm with you all on a couple of different platforms. We're on Instagram. I'm seeing a lot of folks jumping on. Good to be with you guys. I'm also with you on Facebook Live and on YouTube Live. So whichever one, you're totally welcome. So Office Hours Live, I always have a few things to talk about briefly, and then we'll grab a couple of your live questions. But as you're coming on, say hi and let me know where you're from and how's the weather where you are. Kieran and I are moving to Minnesota in a couple weeks. I'm originally from northern Minnesota. I've lived primarily in Arizona since '93. Came down here to start medical school. And my parents are in their late 80s, almost early 90s. They really need more help. So I'm going to be back up there to be closer to them. Also come back down here a lot every so often, stay connected with the team and, do things like that. But Minnesota will be home again here in a few more weeks. And we're going to be living on a lake. We're really excited about that. And our lake still has ice on it. Someone just got a boat out on it a few days ago, but there's still a fair amount of ice left on the lake. So yeah, quite different. So here's someone from Idaho where it's cold and windy. So I'm in the Phoenix area now, and we're, I don't know, probably in the 90s or something. It's, heated up quite a bit, but I keep watching. We just finally stopped having snowstorms in Minnesota in this last week. It was still snowing up there at the northern part of the state. So it's funny how different that can be. So welcome aboard. We got someone from Ottawa, Canada. Weather is beautiful here. Yeah, Paula, up north, I assume it's really picked up this last week. It's gotten to be like nice springtime weather. I don't know how much water you've got up there. We've had a lot in Minnesota, so we're going to have a beautiful spring bloom here in the coming weeks and coming month or so. So to kick this one off, I had something different I want to talk about. I want to talk to you guys first about a recipe, and I'll mention that and talk about it. But as I do, in the back of your head, start thinking about key questions that you might have. And if there's some big ones, we'll cover those. If not, I'll just share a few other points and we'll move forward. But yeah, key questions about thyroid health are the main ones. So someone's in Virginia, 70. That sounds about perfect. That sounds really good. So top questions about thyroid disease. Which medications are best? Are you on too much? What about diet? Which dietary approaches are most effective? How do you lose weight? What about energy? Yeah, some big ones like that. Happy to cover. Hey, Connie, how you doing this afternoon? Good to see you with us. So yeah, top questions on thyroid disease. I'll grab a few of those. Along those lines, here's a sneak preview announcement. Joanne, Arizona to Minnesota weather, that's a drastic difference. Joanne, the town that I grew up in was very far north called Bemidji. And they had all the people that test drove cars for extreme weather in the wintertime. And we'd always see like 3 cars that didn't quite look like anything that was made, and they didn't have all the normal finishes or paint jobs. And they drove around. There was 3 identical ones from different manufacturers, and they just drove around town all winter. And those same poor people, then they would go to Yuma, Arizona in the summertime for extreme weather testing in the summer. So yeah, Yuma, Arizona and Bemidji, Minnesota were the places for extreme weather testing for automobile manufacturers. Nori King is with us. A good question about biotin supplementation and low iodine diet. We'll talk about that. Just before today's live, I spoke with a nutritionist whose focus is low iodine diet. And she got into that because of her diagnosis and treatment for thyroid cancer. And she's done a lot of work and to help educate people on how to effectively do low iodine diets and what's important for them. Question about histamine. Yeah, I've written a bit about that. I'll talk briefly about that in a moment, but happy to do so. That's a tricky situation. So yeah, love to see good questions come in. Thyroid disease, endocrine hormone type issues. May 25th, you guys. So May 25th, we are at the 9th of May. So that'll be 2 weeks from this coming Wednesday is World Thyroid Day. Now, this is 14th annual World Thyroid Day. And this is now a new thing that's occurred. This is occurring in International Thyroid Week. So International Thyroid Week is a new thing. This is going to be May 22nd through May 28th. It's a week, and they gave 6 days for it. Well, What do you do? So yeah, so this is now part of International Thyroid Week. And for 14 years and counting, I've always done some kind of a special event on World Thyroid Day. So no exception. This one I will as well. So stay tuned. We'll do a special live Zoom training event. This is going to be a lot of fun. Good questions coming in. Yeah, and I'm just keeping an eye on those. So today I want to talk briefly about a recipe just to share with you guys. I've got a cookbook coming out next year. I've finished the manuscript. I'm editing that with the publisher, and I wanted to sneak out a version of one of the recipes in the cookbook to give you guys a sneak peek. And because I really love this recipe, it's so insanely easy, and this is now like our family's go-to meal, when we're crunched for time, or, this is kind of cool because it's so fast and easy. You can do it last minute, but you can also do it if you want to invite people over and make something that's really impressive. So I'm going to share a few images. These will show up on the YouTube and Facebook. The images aren't critical, so if you're on Instagram, you're not missing out too much. This first one, I just had a massive Pyrex with 6 cups of water. So this is the first ingredient. So I'll walk you guys through these ingredients. It's insanely easy, and this is really good. This is basically a ginger garlic poached chicken dish. You can make this kind of like a soup. You can add all kinds of different vegetables in that. So 6 cups of water. You put this in a good size saucepan. So that's step one. Really easy step. 6 cups of water, good size saucepan. You want about, at least twice that much room. And next up, you want, this is actually 2 of those, so 2 tablespoons of salt. Now, here's the thing, you guys. I cook with kosher salt. And when you cook with kosher salt, it's fluffy. It's not as dense as granulated salt. So when recipes call for a tablespoon of salt and you use kosher salt, you got to measure twice the volume. So a lot of recipes will call for 1 tablespoon of granulated salt. Well, that's 2 tablespoons of kosher salt. Now, if you're weighing your salt, it's the same because it's the same weight. But kosher salt is fluffier. It's less dense. So with this one, we're going to use that 6 cups of water, and we're going to use 2 of these tablespoons of kosher salt. Now, here's where it starts getting fun. So we're going to use 2 heads of garlic. So not cloves of garlic. We're talking heads of garlic. Now, I've tried so hard. There's all-purpose nutritionists here. Maybe she's got some comments on this too. I've tried so hard to find ways to use garlic that don't require you to actually peel the garlic, right, and get down to it. I've bought the peeled garlic. You get it in plastic containers. It's never been as good. I've even gotten peeled garlic that's in a brine. I've never got much flavor from that. Then there's all the minced versions of garlic you can buy in jars. One time getting ready for this last cookbook, I actually bought like every garlic thing I could find in the supermarket and compared it against nice fresh garlic. Nothing was even close, right? So I love a lot of garlic, but it's a lot of work to get every little clove out of a head, right? So in this recipe, you chop 2 heads of garlic in half, like right down there, boom. That's all the prepping. You just chop them in half. You can throw them in that saucepan with the water. Okay, so that's step 3, I guess. So we got 6 cups of water. We've got 2 tablespoons of kosher salt, and we've got 2 heads of garlic that are just cut in half. That's all you do to it is you cut them in half. Next up is ginger. Now, in terms of props, props in today's pictures, I was plumb out of fresh ginger in my kitchen. So that went right on the shopping list. I used it a lot. But I really like this brand of minced ginger. I find that it holds up really well volume per volume against fresh ginger. So this one, I use a tablespoon of it. With fresh ginger, I use about, they always talk about this in terms of like how many inches of ginger. Well, the roots aren't the same width, so that's not perfect. But the recipe says like 3 to 4 inch chunk of ginger. And I just chop that very coarsely, like a few big slices. So we've got water, salt, garlic, ginger, right? So we're going to put those on the heat and get that to a low simmer, give it about 10 minutes. You're basically making like a really strong decoction out of garlic and ginger. So that's heated for about 10 minutes. And once that's done so, I'll then pour it and strain it and remove the garlic and ginger. So I pour the liquid out of the saucepan over a strainer into a large Pyrex to catch the liquid, then pour it back in the saucepan. So I just took out all the garlic pieces and all the ginger pieces, but you've got all the flavor of them in the liquid. Then I'll take some chicken. I usually do about 2 good-sized chicken breasts. These haven't yet been cleaned or prepped. I'll cut them into pretty much bite-sized pieces and remove anything needs to be cleaned off, like some of this fat portion. So clean them and prep them, bite-sized pieces. Then I'll put the saucepan back on the stove, heat that up to a low simmer, let the chicken go till it's just cooked, like just adequately, but not excessively. And I always add veggies. Baby bok choy is often awesome in this dish. Cabbage works really well. Chinese cabbage is good. Spinach can work fine. Cauliflower has been good. Most of mushrooms can be good in that. But yeah, so the chicken is now just in this broth of garlic and ginger, and I'll usually garnish that with some scallions. I'll chop these up to about there or so and put them on top for a garnish. And sometimes I'll get really fancy and get some lime wedges to serve with it too. But yeah, that's the poached garlic ginger chicken. And all it takes, like really like whole thing, 15 minutes start to finish. So you're just boiling some water with ginger and garlic, straining them out, cooking some chicken and or veggies in that broth, and you're good to go. So yeah, 2 big heads of garlic, about 3-4 inches of ginger coarsely chopped, 2 tablespoons of salt, 6 cups of water. That's it. Super, super easy. Okay, so that was the recipe. Now, let's grab a couple of questions. I'm just taking a peek. I'm watching on Instagram and also on Facebook and YouTube for questions. Yeah. So here's a great one. My thyroid health. Cool name for a thyroid question. Any diet recommendations for thyroid nodules? Would an anti-inflammatory diet be effective? My thyroid health. So you've inspired me into a very brief digression. I apologize in advance. So something I do as a volunteer is I volunteer at a medical school and I train the residents. There's a group of residents who train all the incoming doctors. And so I do case reviews with them on thyroid disease and talk them through that. And one of the residents asked a question a lot like that, but more so for general diet and thyroid health. And her concern was, she said, "Hey, I have people with thyroid disease do dietary change. Nothing seems to help. What else can I do from there?" And so at first I was kind of stymied. I thought, heck, I see so many people improve from dietary change and thyroid disease. And and I started thinking about what else to do. Then I said, wait a minute, let's go back to the basics. So what are you recommending to your patients? And she said, oh, anti-inflammatory diets, gluten-free diets. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Those things can be helpful sometimes for some people, but there's honestly no evidence whatsoever that they help thyroid disease. So anti-inflammatory diets they're good, healthy ideas in general, but yeah, no drawbacks to them. So in terms of helping thyroid function, the things that are known to help nodules, good improvements in thyroid autoimmunity, so reducing antibodies, that's important. Keeping TSH at a lower, healthier range, that's important. Managing body weight, that makes a big difference. So in terms of dietary changes, number one and number two, that's regulating iodine. So my thyroid health, I'd love to know if you've looked at the Thyroid Reset Diet just yet. That's my last book, and it's all about how to regulate iodine for improving thyroid health. Nodules specifically, yeah, weight gain is a big factor, TSH, and then overall iodine status. So those are your top 3 goals for that. The other trick about nodules is that we have a new supplement called Nodule Control, and that contains 5 clinically proven ingredients that have been shown to shrink nodules by 30 to 60%. All natural stuff. So that's my Cliff's Notes on what to do about thyroid nodules. Keep the TSH in good check by controlling iodine, lower the antibodies by controlling iodine, and consider nodule control for some extra help. I think I saw a couple earlier here as well. So I'm going back a little bit. Yeah. So here's a quick one for Nori King. Good to see you. You're with us a lot here. I'm always happy to have you join us. Biotin supplement okay with a low iodine diet? I can totally understand why you'd ask that question. So biotin can goof up thyroid labs, and it can make them look too high or too low, and the effects can linger for several days. So when you want to get your thyroid test done, there's 5 rules, and you want to do them at least 3 days after any supplements. And it's mostly biotin and probiotics, but I think it's easier just to stop all your supplements for 3 days. And of course, if your doctor says that they're important to take daily, then just do the ones that will skew the labs, right? So 3 days of no supplements. And then also in the morning fasting before thyroid meds. Between 6 to 9 a.m. and then not in the middle of your cycle. So if you're menstruating, get it days 1 through 9 or days 21 through 28 for your labs, but not mid-cycle. So those are the 5 big rules. Now, the biotin is not excluded because biotin doesn't harm your thyroid, and biotin doesn't harm your thyroid levels. But the assays that they use for doing thyroid labs, they are skewed by circulating levels of biotin in the bloodstream. And the amount that we would have from dietary sources are not enough to do that, but from biotin supplements, it is. So yeah, it just goofs up the labs. There's no harm with biotin to thyroid function, and therefore no problems with biotin supplements with a low iodine diet. Now, how much do you need? You need a megadose of biotin. Biotin, the name itself comes from the Greek origin word bios or universal. It's in a lot of things. It's almost universal. And there's only been documented cases of biotin deficiency in cases of people who consume very high amounts of raw egg whites in the absence of any egg yolks. So if you're chugging like dozens of raw egg whites per day, no, not even like liquid pasteurized eggs, but totally raw egg whites, then you can develop a biotin deficiency. There's an enzyme called avidane in egg whites, which breaks down biotin. And that's neutralized by cooking, but it's also canceled out by biotin in egg yolks. So if you're having cooked egg whites, it's not really an issue. I do encourage some in supplementation, and I do put a basal amount in the Daily Reset pack and the Daily Reset bundle. So it's there, but I really don't see a cause to need to take it above and beyond that. But yeah, in any case, it won't be a problem with a low iodine diet. So good one. Another related one, myo-inositol beneficial for Hashimoto's. So inositol can be of benefit, and I included that in the antibody support for that reason. It's one of several nutraceuticals that's been shown to lower thyroid antibodies. No big drawbacks to it, but its context is probably more effective in combination with Nigella sativa and selenium. So the clinical trials have shown that those are the 3 things that are collectively effective for lowering thyroid antibodies. Nigella sativa is also called black cumin or black seed oil. And in our antibody support that we made, we included inositol and Nigella sativa and selenium. So yeah, and that was why, because there's good data on them being useful in those ways. Okay, so there's some for oh yeah, heck, this is a great one. This is one that you know what I've got to thank you for asking this question, Ileana. I hope I'm saying your name right. Um, I've got to quickly open a document. I'm writing a whole bunch of new blogs right now for the coming weeks, and I'm just kind of playing with topics. And yours is one that it wasn't on my list, but it absolutely has to be on my list. So I'm adding it there right now. So iodine and breast health. This is how the sausage is made in real time. That's going to go on the next blog list. So awesome question. Any thoughts on iodine and breast health is a question. Don't want to sacrifice breast health for thyroid health. Thanks. So this question comes about because many have been told that your breast tissue needs a lot of iodine and that low levels of iodine are dangerous for breast cancer or breast problems. Now, the short answer is the exact opposite is true. Now, the reason that the breasts come up in the context of iodine is that they also contain the enzyme NIS, which is the sodium iodide symporter. So the breast cells pump in iodine like thyroid cells do. But how active is that pump? It's different in different circumstances. So guys, non-lactating women, there's really not much NIS activity in the breast tissue. If women are lactating, there's some activity. The baby needs iodine, and the amount of iodine in breast milk is too low. Just the same, I'm sorry, the amount of iodine in the bloodstream is too low. So other nutrients, the breast milk pretty much mirrors the bloodstream. But in the case of the thyroid, in the case of breast milk, the concentration of iodine has to be a little bit higher, and the body controls that. And so that's what NIS does. Now, with fibroadenomatous breast disease, the levels of iodine are higher, and highest yet are in various versions of neoplastic breast cancer. So breast cancer, there's the most expression of NIS. And the argument about iodine being protective for the breasts kind of went like this. The argument was that, Japanese women have a higher iodine intake and they have lower rates of breast cancer. Therefore, the high iodine must protect them. Well, that's a starting hypothesis, but there's a lot of other ways that those things could both be true. So it could be true that they do have a high iodine intake, but that's not protective against breast cancer. Other factors could be. And so studies were done in which they looked at the iodine status of Japanese women and compared their iodine status to their breast cancer risk. And it turns out those with breast cancer have the highest amount of iodine in their systems and vice versa. And this is now shown up in other population studies as well. So it's been shown that on a population wide level, iodine excretion is a risk factor for breast cancer. So, yeah, high iodine is a risk factor. And there's also been papers showing that in the US, the overall urinary excretion of iodine is a risk, it correlates with the risk for other cancers and also total mortality. So, Ileana, you don't have to sacrifice your breast health. The guidelines in the thyroid reset diet will only make things better for your risk for breast disease. I can talk in a lot more detail about that, and I'll keep an eye open for clarification questions about that one because this is a big topic, and I've heard many with very valid concerns and questions about that. So I'll keep an eye out for more detailed follow-up questions about iodine and breast health. Happy to explain that better or further. Oh, La Familia. So another theme, you guys, about office hours, I like to get related questions, so ones that tie to others. And the reason for that is because we get to go deeper and deeper and deeper in these topics. I want you guys to hear stuff you wouldn't hear otherwise. You know, if you take a minute and Google a topic, you can find a whole lot of stuff, but you won't find things that are always that level of the detail, right? And I want you to get that here. I want you to find things out that you wouldn't really hear otherwise. So related questions. So back to the discussion about probiotics. Will the ultrabiotic from Integrative Health mess with lab results? La Familia. So probiotics can skew thyroid blood levels within about 3 days of usage. So that's true of all probiotics. And the simplest thing I encourage for people is just stop all supplements 3 days before your thyroid lab tests. And just be clear, it's not saying that probiotics hurt your thyroid or they give you abnormal blood levels inside your body. But the way that it's read outside of your body, some things in your bloodstream can give goofy readings. They can change the numbers of that. And that's true pretty much across the board for probiotics. And Nori, so follow-up question. Yeah, if a B complex with biotin is okay. So lots of things in there. So as far as skewing your labs, they still could. So still do 3 days. And in terms of okay, generally sure. Nori King, I've had more and more people write in wishing to avoid high dose B vitamins. And so our new Thyroid Daily, which is part of the Thyroid Daily bundle, is a low dose B vitamin blend as part of the multi. So there are those that are sensitive to B complex vitamins. They can have anxiety symptoms from them. They can have food cravings, actually, can be a rather common side effect from high dose B vitamins. And I can't find strong arguments for the need for megadose B vitamins anymore. I can't find a good argument for them. And there are those who find they are sensitive to them. So my newer formulations use smaller amounts of them. So yeah, okay, no harm to things otherwise, but just something to think through and wonder about. Okay, so follow-up one, we'll look into your book, Order Nodule Control. Yeah, so please do look at the guidelines in the book. That'll help so much with nodule control. And if someone did have a need for substantial weight loss, then take a look at the Metabolism Reset Metabolism Reset book for some ideas around weight loss. And a cool thing that's I think is inspirational is that the ways in which weight loss improves health, it's not like they only occur when you hit some arbitrary ideal number. They occur within the first several pounds that come off. So yeah, that can make a big difference for those to whom it may be helpful. Related questions still. So another one about just iodine and things. I mentioned salt. Been using Himalayan salt, but someone told me I need to get it with iodine. Is that true? This is hilarious. So iodine's a big topic. So you pretty much don't need extra iodine. If you're here, if your thyroid's an issue, you probably need less iodine. Please grab the Thyroid Reset Diet. The exciting thing is that somewhere around 60 to 80% of people can fully reverse thyroid disease by regulating their iodine. And the book talks through how to do that. And the insider story is that for most people, that means less. It means avoiding it. Now, pink Himalayan salt is not fortified with iodine. I've got a dear friend who's a popular health expert, and she was on Instagram recently saying how you've got to make sure you're getting these salts with iodine. Well, you don't need the extra iodine, but ironically, salts can be fortified with iodine or they can have it naturally occurring. And the only assays I could find on pink Himalayan salt when I wrote the Thyroid Reset Diet it gave the amount of iodine in a function of grams per kilogram. And it took a lot of rearranging decimal places to get that to, micrograms per gram and then micrograms per serving. Our serving size for salt is like five grams per day typically. So when all the math was done, the dust was settled, the numbers were triple checked, pink Himalayan salt, even though it's not fortified with iodine, has twice the iodine of iodized salt. And that's already too much. So no, you don't need more. There's a whole lot in there. My favorite salt is Morton's kosher. I'm sorry, Diamond brand kosher salt. It's my very favorite one for general kitchen use. And my thought about sea salt. So I I kind of grew up in a health food world, and I worked in a food co-op when I was very young. I've always been into that stuff, and I was into sea salt for many years. And my rationale was that you get extra minerals from sea salt, right? So it must be good for you in those ways. But then I looked at the assays of sea salt. They're not scary, but there's a lot of stuff you just wouldn't want. There's arsenic, there's mercury, there's lead, there's cadmium, there's things that are toxic metals. They're not in high amounts, but they're there. But the good minerals, the things that are not just sodium chloride, a lot of them are there, but the amounts are totally meaningless. Like for example, potassium. I saw one blog saying sea salt is good because it's a rich source of potassium. Well, it's a source of potassium, but is it a rich source? Here's some numbers. So as an adult, we need 3,000 to 5,000 milligrams of potassium on a daily basis. Now, a serving of sea salt might give us about 1/2 of a milligram. So no joke, if you do 6 to 10,000 servings of sea salt per day, you might meet your potassium needs. Yeah, there's none in there. There's no practical amount. Salt isn't a vitamin. Salt doesn't give you minerals that are relevant. It's seasoning, it's sodium chloride, which is fine. Our bodies need that and do well with that. But don't think that salt is filling any nutritional gaps, because it's just not. The things like potassium or iron or zinc, they're there, but the amounts compared to your daily requirements are, no joke, thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of times lower than your daily requirements are. So yeah, they won't close up any nutritional gaps for you at all. Related questions. Let me grab a few over on the other platforms here and kind of keep things moving along. Got a lot of other good ones coming in. So I'm reading, there's some longer ones here. I'm trying to find, so Sean, thank you. I was sent some really good questions. I'm trying to find some that can give some good answers on here without too much depth. Let's see, types of diets effective, long and short priority. Notice the high carb diets, higher T3, rotation. So big picture, Sean, when I would say that, so Sean's asking, during the metabolism webinar, I mentioned that many diets can be effective as long as one makes protein a priority. Well, I would say that like post hoc, like after the fact. So if someone has done some kind of a diet and they've had a benefit to their body's constitution, that's great. But if someone is saying is what is most likely to work, then I wouldn't say anything's likely to work, because there's strong data that some things are more likely to work than others. And Sean, I agree. There's large amounts of data saying that extreme low carb diets can cause dysfunctions to peripheral thyroid metabolism. So yeah, the ideas in the metabolism reset diet were based upon methods to help to improve body composition. We always talk about weight loss. We're really trying to achieve lasting fat loss. And some things that achieve short-term weight loss are counterproductive for lasting fat loss. So those are adaptive, and the timing of metabolism reset diet is also done in ways to inhibit downregulation of metabolism, to actually upregulate it. And much of that goes back to thyroid function. Melissa, I'm vegan. Are algae oil capsules for omega-3 high in iodine? Melissa, I've never seen assays on them. If you do find any, please do send them in. I honestly don't know. Algae, this is kind of a funny thing. We call algae vegan. Some say it is and some say it isn't. Not for me to say. I don't really make those rules. But these are small living creatures that swim around in the sea. They're not shrimp. They're not like big animals, but they're not plants. Yeah, I'm not sure we're going to put that exactly. But yeah, they are sea-derived. There are some that are cultured, but the sea-derived ones, there would be a concern about that, but I've not seen assays on the iodine content of that. So Melissa, as a vegan, you can do pretty well on omega-3 fats from flax oil. And kind of a funny paradox, flax oil has ALA, which your body can pretty right away convert into EPA and can often convert into DHA. There's kind of a funny paradox. The more fat you consume, the more that the enzyme called delta 5 desaturase is used up. And in those cases, you can't do a good job converting ALA into EPA and DHA. So if you're on a lower fat, generally a lower fat vegan diet with some flax oil, you're probably going to do fine for your omega-3 fats. You can convert it really well. Let's see. Thoughts on Redmond salt? Yeah, I've seen that one. I actually asked the manufacturer for iodine assays, couldn't really find any. Salt, really, it's something that's going to flavor foods, and the flavoring is just the sodium chloride and then the physical chemistry, the physical shape of the actual crystals. All the ways in which salt is like gray or pink or red, those are contaminants. Those are things that arguably don't add to flavor according to the world's top chefs. So I think about salt as being something I want to have it be pure. I want it just to be salt. And the physical structure is also important. So yeah, I love just a Diamond brand kosher salt or other just simple kosher salts. Their ingredient is salt. There's nothing else there. And I saw another question about salt. I want to follow up on that one too. So I'm scrolling back here. Where did that one go? I'm not seeing it now, but I will watch for other related follow-ups on it. Looking at one more spot. Nope. Okay. Okay, so there it was. Celtic gray sea salt. Okay, yeah. So really detailed. I'd like to have simple rules, but iodine doesn't work as simple rules. You got to have actual assays for what's in products. And then are the assays consistent, or is it sometimes high, sometimes low? So Celtic brand salt has light gray, coarse ground, and fine ground sea salt. Celtic brand has a lot of different lines of sea salt. There's many types. They've got some pink sea salts. They've got, I'm gapping on some of the names. They've got a lot of subcategories, but their light gray, coarse ground and fine ground sea salts were consistently very low in iodine on the assays, low enough to be negligible. So yeah, not a negative issue with those. And then how does low-dose iodine supplementation help with fibrocystic breast disease? Yep. So that's the follow-up question. So the fibrocystic breast disease story is kind of what launched a lot of the iodine madness that we're still dealing with. So women with fibrocystic breast disease, there was a few papers showing, and it was actually high dose they were given. They were given 5,000 micrograms of iodine per day, and about two-thirds of them, it was around 60%, noticed that they didn't have as much pain in their breasts. And so that was encouraging. Can be a tough condition and hard to resolve their pain. Now, a gynecologist read that study, and he didn't understand the difference between a nutrient acting like a nutrient and a nutrient acting like a drug. Here's what I mean by that. Niacin can be a nutrient or a drug. Niacin can treat a niacin deficiency, but niacin can also block a liver enzyme called HMG-CoA reductase that makes cholesterol. So someone with high cholesterol can often lower that with niacin. Now, I'm not saying that you should or that it's helpful or that it cuts heart disease risk. I'm just saying that it does lower cholesterol, okay? Now, that doesn't mean everybody with a high cholesterol really has a niacin deficiency and that they only get their deficiency cured with a massive dose of niacin. That would not be an accurate reading. That's confusing niacin as a nutrient with niacin as a drug. So this gentleman made that mistake with iodine. He assumed that these women who 60% of which had a reduction of pain with high dose iodine, therefore had an iodine deficiency. And that deficiency could only be corrected with megadose iodine. That's just not true. Now, the reason that iodine sometimes helps the pain of fibrocystic breast disease is, back to what I was saying, there's a pump. There's the sodium iodide symporter that pulls iodine inside the breast tissue. Why would that cause pain? Well, it's a sodium pump. It's a sodium iodide symporter. So as it's pulling in iodine, it's also causing more fluid retention. And if that pump is overactive, the breasts the cells swell with water. And that swelling is thought to be a big part of the process of fibroadenomatous breast disease. And that's where the pain comes from. When you take a high dose of iodine, one of the things that always surprises people is that you actually shut down the iodine pump. So a lot of iodine basically throws the fuse and you shut down the pump. So you quit absorbing iodine. And that's why iodine is used for like radiation exposure, for radioactive iodine. So you give a dose of iodine, so your body shuts down and you won't take in the radioactive iodine. And with the breast tissue, we now know that a megadose of iodine may temporarily shut down the overactive iodine pump. So in the short term, there may be less pressure in the breasts and some pain benefit for some. But it's the exact opposite of the problem. The problem is there's too much iodine getting in those tissues. So if you flood the body with iodine, for a little while, you get a break because you shut off the pump. But that only lasts for a few weeks. It's called the Wolff-Chaikoff effect. The longer term solution is regulating iodine, having less coming in. That's not the only part of the problem of fibrocystic breast disease, but that's why something that's the opposite of what the body's trying to do can actually help the symptoms in the short term. Okay. Yeah, so La Familia, I see in their package it says it does not supply iodine. So with iodized salts or with salts in general, they will say it doesn't supply iodine when they don't fortify it with iodine. That's not the same as the salt naturally containing iodine. So there's many non-fortified sea salts on the market that when you read their assays, they're very high in iodine, but on the label it'll say this product does not supply iodine, a necessary nutrient. And that's legal labeling for all salt that's not fortified with iodine. They have to say that. But that's, again, not respective of the actual iodine content naturally occurring in the salt. That's what they have to say if they haven't added iodine into the salt. Okay, so good questions, you guys. Let's see. Here's one. This is a very detailed one, if I can address that. Let me get something I can get to. Yeah, I heard about salts from Iran supposedly has the most minerals in it, but I bet it's the same as a sea salt. Yeah, again, salt has a lot of minerals, but a lot of number of minerals, but not an amount of minerals. It won't close. Minerals are really coming from good veggies more than anything. So yeah, good variety of foods in the diet, lots of veggies grown in rich soils. That's where most minerals come from. Salt supplies sodium chloride. It does contain potassium. Sea salts can contain potassium, zinc, iron, pretty much every mineral you can think of, but the amounts of which are just not relevant. Linda, consuming sea salt doesn't contain iodine. How do we ensure we have enough iodine in our diets? Linda, wow, you're new here. Welcome. So if your thyroid function is great, the goal is to be roughly between about 50 and 200 micrograms of iodine per day. If you're on a modern diet, you're there. And by modern, I mean any version of a modern diet with a range of foods. So not enough iodine really isn't a problem in the modern world, Linda. In 1992, there was 112 nations considered at risk for thyroid disease due to iodine excess. There are now none. There's 0 that are there. But we have 52 nations at risk for thyroid disease due to iodine excess, not deficiency. So no nations are at deficiency. I might have said that backward before. So prior to 92, 112 nations were at risk for disease to iodine deficiency, right? Now there are 0, but there are 52 at risk from iodine excess. So not getting enough is not really an issue anymore. And the odd thing, this is not true for other nutrients. Most nutrients, there's a broad range that's fine and safe. With iodine, for some people, those who are prone to thyroid disease, there's only a narrow range that's safe and effective. And they're more apt to get too much than they are to get too little. There's requirements and there's tolerance. So people with prone to thyroid disease, they have a normal requirement for iodine, but they have a lower tolerance for extra iodine. So the upper part of their window is lower, and too much is apt to be more harmful for them. That's the big deal. How to help self-induced hypothyroidism through excess iodine. Yeah, so Vicky, if someone does develop hypothyroidism from too much iodine, the solution is to reverse that. And the good news that is in most cases, by getting iodine below a certain threshold, it can get better. Now, Vicky, the thing is that you can have if you're consuming a massive amount of iodine, you could lower to an amount that could be safe for maintenance, but it might not be low enough to reverse the excess. And that's why I wrote the Thyroid Reset Diet. It shows you how to get to a low enough amount so you can get rid of those extra amounts of iodine. And that's typically well under 100 micrograms per day to clear off an excess. If you're consuming an amount even as high as 100 to 200, that's not necessarily too much, but it may be enough to inhibit the excretion of extra iodine. So that's the big difference. So related questions here. A lot of good questions. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm trying to just like scroll through and choose. I'll get a couple more of these here. Yeah, Melissa, thyroid issues are growing so much. We need to require manufacturers to list the amount. This is a really tricky thing because the amount varies so much from batch to batch and product to product. So even if they could, they would have to assay like everything they ever made. So that's where it takes us being aware of food categories, really. Related questions. After following thyroid reset diet, getting my iodine down below 40, as a vegan who eats only whole foods, should I be concerned about getting enough iodine? So, Lori, I don't know the context. If you're on thyroid medication, you really do not, because you're getting what you need to make your thyroid hormones through the medication. If you're not on thyroid medication, then I encourage being between about 50 and 200 for a maintenance amount. You can do that pretty well on a vegan diet, Lori. If you're raw food only, that can be harder. But Lori, in the thyroid reset diet, I did talk in, there's some Q&A in the back. And the last chapter on the FAQs I talked in detail about how to work around that when you are vegan and some solutions for that. So yeah, take a look at that. Ozzy Martin, do you provide a list of salts we can buy that have been assayed? I do talk through that in the Thyroid Reset Diet, super detailed. Again, my top pick, Diamond Brand Kosher, the Celtic Light Gray is nice if you like sea salt, but those are all in the Thyroid Reset Diet, really good detail. Frankie, related question, wild-caught elastic salmon. Any concern about iodine content? Should this be limited? Yeah, so Frankie, with the Thyroid Reset Diet, the reset phase is only doing green light foods. Those are foods that each one has about less than 10 micrograms of iodine per serving normally. The maintenance diet, so after your thyroid's dialed in and stable, then it's maintenance time. And there I encourage you can add in 1 or 2 servings of yellow light foods per day. Those have typically between 10 to 50 micrograms of iodine per serving. That's where the salmon would fit, Frankie. So yeah, wild Alaskan salmon, it's going to be in that yellow light range. And in the Thyroid Reset Diet book, it's in that yellow light food list. And so that's when it's great for the maintenance stage, very healthy food overall. But for those who want to really reverse thyroid disease, there may be too much in it for that as well. Lynn, trying to get real salt in Utah to answer the iodine content. Have used their salt when I use salt. I buy the Celtic salt, like to stay local. Shocked at the numbers of foods with excess iodine, trying to stay on your diet. Yeah, I've not got them to answer that either. So in general, I don't know, get the assays for iodine, get the assays for everything. If you look at a lot of salts that are not just salt, they're not just pure salt, they've got stuff in there you don't want. There was a product called concentrates or colloidal minerals was a big fad back in the 90s. And the argument was that your body needed all of these naturally occurring elements. It doesn't. There's 15 we know that we need, but there's tons of them like gold and mercury and arsenic and lead and aluminum that there's no healthy amount of. There's no amount that we require. And when you look at products like that that are the naturally occurring salt sources that aren't just salt, they've got a lot of that stuff in there. And usually small enough amounts, but there's no amount that's helpful. So yeah, I'm not a fan. Frankie, cool. Thank you. Reversed already. Maintenance for over a year now. And I do a reset at least once a year, typically twice. Frankie, that's a cool story. Thank you so much for sharing that. So this is someone else who reversed their thyroid disease. And now that the book has been out for a little while, we're seeing tons of stories like this rolling in. And that's the thing. Thyroid disease is reversible for a really good percent of people. And here's one more story about that. Let me grab 1 or 2 more questions. I'm going to go do a little exercise this afternoon before I get supper going. But I'm going to get a couple more questions first. I see related one to what I just said. Does exercise help use up excess iodine in the thyroid? No. So here's the story, Melissa. So your thyroid, it gets rid of iodine in 2 ways. There's the iodine that gets packaged up into thyroid hormones and gets excreted. So when you make T3 and T4, those contain iodine. The iodine in them is part of the iodine that leaves your thyroid. There's also what's called the non-hormonal excretion. So some of the iodine that your thyroid puts out is not bound up in hormone. Now that second part is slim to none. It's like very minimal. So almost all the iodine that leaves your thyroid leaves in the form of thyroid hormones. So when you're on thyroid medication and you're taking the thyroid hormones your body needs, the iodine doesn't readily leave. The iodine's staying in your thyroid because your thyroid's not putting out much hormone by itself. And I'm not saying medicine is always blocking that, but if you're not making your own thyroid hormone to a large degree, then there's not much iodine leaving your thyroid. So that's why you could consume a reasonable amount of iodine. You could consume, 100, 200 micrograms. That's not a crazy amount, but there's that much coming in. There's never a chance for your thyroid to get rid of that extra. So it's only when you get below 100 micrograms that your thyroid has a chance to eliminate that extra iodine that's been stored up. So that's the difference that way. So yeah, exercise doesn't, that was a long answer, but short answer is exercise doesn't change that. It's good for a million reasons, but it won't change how fast iodine gets out of your thyroid. Farm meets table. Have you seen someone reverse their thyroid issues after having a partial thyroidectomy? Yes, rather often. Now, reverse thyroid issues, I think you mean not need thyroid meds. I would like to talk about two definitions of that. So one is that your thyroid works fine all by itself. The other one is you feel fine. So you're finally, perhaps with medication, but at least you reverse the symptoms, whereas before you did not. And I would argue anyone with thyroid disease can do that. They can at least feel as well as they did before it started. A large percent of people can also need less medication, and a large percent can no longer need medication. So those are possible for many people. And I have seen that for those who have had partial thyroidectomies. We actually had a patient at Integrative Health that had a total thyroidectomy that ended up no longer needing thyroid medication. Now, she obviously had some residual thyroid tissue left. There's no other way. So there was some tissue remaining that did heal. So it can happen. I've seen it happen in cases where you just wouldn't expect it. Okay. Let me get one last one. This is a quick, easy one I can address. Can tyrosine help hypothyroid? So short answer is no. The detailed answer is your body needs tyrosine to make thyroglobulin. But the question is, does a lack of tyrosine mean that, is that why thyroid disease happens? And yeah, the answer is no. So I was talking about all the new blogs I'm going to write. I've got like 25 topics right here. I was toying with writing about tyrosine, but there's really nothing to say other than you don't need it. The longer answer is that it's a non-essential amino acid. Our bodies can synthesize it, and it's in a ton of food sources. So there's never been a known case of someone developing thyroid disease from a tyrosine deficiency, barring a handful of extremely rare genetic disorders. But yeah, barring that, you don't develop thyroid disease from a lack of tyrosine, and you don't stimulate the thyroid by adding in tyrosine. I want you guys to change your mindset about that. We used to think about nutrients as being things like, if a lack of a nutrient causes a problem, if it makes you tired, then more of a nutrient must give you like super energy. That's kind of the mindset behind megadose B vitamins. If a B vitamin deficiency causes fatigue, then does a megadose of B vitamins give like a stimulant energy boost? Well, no. So nutrients aren't like that. They're like a key to your car. So if the key is missing, the car can't move. But once the one key is there, once you've got just that one key for your car to make it go, 2 keys won't make it twice as fast, and 10 keys won't make it 10 times as fast. So yeah, once you've got tyrosine, which people do, then more tyrosine won't do anything useful beyond that. So, all right, that's it. So May 25th, you guys, World Thyroid Day, 2 weeks from this coming Wednesday. Really cool special event. In the meantime, please continue to put up questions that you have between office hours. I'm making my list for new blogs, and I'm trying to figure out topics that are important to you all. So I listen to these, and I go deeper in the ones you guys ask about too. But yeah, put up your topics. I'm going to make a whole bunch of new blogs in these coming weeks, and I'll see you guys for our office hours next week. In the meantime, have a great one and take good care of yourselves. And try the chicken. If you came in late, check out the recordings. I gave a recipe for this poached ginger garlic chicken. And the ease for this recipe, like the minimal prep time, the minimal cooking time, versus how insanely good this is, I promise if you make it, you're going to be blown away. So somebody cook it and give us some feedback about it, but it's really easy and really good. All right, see you guys next week. Take care. Bye-bye.